Hello, internet friends. My name is Bay. Welcome to the Battle for Azeroth beta, the second pass for the Blood Death Knight, which, on the surface, hasn't really changed very much, but under the hood, I'm gonna go over talent adjustments. Spells and abilities have been lost or gained. What's been kept from your Legion artifacts or legendaries, new graphics, a brief overview of the Warmode talent system, and any GCD changes. There'll be no true gameplay in this series, so consider this more of a one-man podcast walkthrough primer from Legion into the Battle for Azeroth, and the entire second pass testing VOD is down in the video description box right here on the YouTube channel. The VOD itself is over on my Twitch page, so you want to go watch all the nitty-gritty. You can go feel free to go watch that or listen to it, all the ramblings. And then, of course, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, thoughts about the Blood DK, leave those down below in the comments section. Let me know if you feel like it's too slow. That's the #1 concern I've heard lately. And then, of course, if you're new to the channel and enjoy the ramblings herein, the walkthrough that I'm putting together, hit that subscribe button. Be up to date on whenever new videos come out. Of course, that's how YouTube works. So we're sitting here next to this, what is this, the Tide Sage Doom speaker? So if you hear any clapping, it's these NPCs, but this is a neat little foreboding stance because these are obviously old god supporters, and we are going to cleanse them. So I'm gonna go over all this stuff with the broken everything. Yes, beta. I have a lot of notes, a lot of little numerical things to go over. So if I don't bring up something specifically, then just imagine that it's the same as it is on live, right? But overall, there is about a page, of notes I had here. The first one up is that Reap Magic, which was your purge / runic power generating offensive defensive tool, was recently pulled right out from under your legs and is now on the Demon Hunters. Sorry about that, DKs, but apparently battle res and, of course, grips are all that you should have for your utility toolkit, at least in raids and stuff. But so now Havoc and Vengeance have Reap Magic. So battle res changes, first off, though. This was one thing that I went over in the alpha videos, but I wanted to make sure I reiterated this upon these videos because you're a battle res class. So druids have a cast time. It's 2 seconds normally, or instant cast for bear form. Bear form res though cost rage, 10 rage. They're a 2-second cast time, and they are 100% HP, 20% mana. The warlock and the death knight are both 60% HP, 20% mana. However, it's instant for DKs, but it costs 30 runic power. Warlocks, it's free with a 3-second cast time either before or during combat stuff. So they're all a little different now. Druids going to 100% HP, though, is really powerful. And I'm not sure they needed anything else. I brought the Reap Magic thing to sort of preface this issue, where I don't know why Blizzard thought that you needed to lose utility, but then not get anything. And they gave you back the cost on your res. So basically just Druids resing everyone from now on, I guess. And here, of course, is the biggest kicker. Gorfine's Grasp had a range nerf. I rarely ever use that word, of course, if it actually is a tangible cut down in power, which we knew was going to happen, right? So now your range for your overall yank in towards the target or towards yourself is 15 yards now. And to give you a bit more of a... Oh, I forgot I was on this mount. To give you a bit more of a understanding on how far 15 yards is in comparison. So Blood Boil is 10 yards. So let me see where Blood Boil hits this target dummy. So it was right there. That was 10. So if I back up here-ish and then just extend this circle out to the target dummy, that is like the new Gorfine's Grasp circle, whereas before you would double the circle, right? If this is 10 yards and that's to 15, you would add twice that because it was 20 yards on live. So Gorfine's is a little bit less powerful in the overall area. It'll yank stuff to a target. Of course, if you have no target, to pull stuff to yourself. But that was going to happen. We knew it was going to happen. So your Death Knight dots, in this case, your Blood Plague still has no haste scaling, even though bleeds and poison skill of haste now I guess they forgot about Death Knights. I'm not sure why. On top of that, Veteran of the Third War, of the Third War, also had its armor bumped up to 20%, up from 15. Mostly just a scaling interaction. That's just not a real buff. That's supposed to be a scaling thing because obviously you're losing armor in relation to Legion's huge numbers to the smaller numbers. So just a small bump in there. The rune regen system is still 10 seconds per rune overall. And then every 10% haste is 1 second off of those runes. You can only have 2 runes regenning in tandem, then one will be high, and then, you know, the next ones will go. Same thing you've been seeing before, but the 10 seconds is still there. Every 10% haste is 1 second off. There we go. Death Strike. And this is in tandem with your mastery. So this was the first of the quote-unquote tank nerfs or tuning pass that was just happening in the last build, which it's just tuning, right? So your mastery, they bumped up your base mastery from 12% to 16%. So the same mechanic where your the amount of your mastery from the heal of Death Strike equals a physical damage absorption shield. They give you 4% mastery for free. But in that regard, they also changed Death Strike a little bit. So it's still 45 base runic power, which can be modified through some talents. It is physical damage. So of course that part of it, the damage-wise, will obviously scale with the physical attack power side of the mastery scaler, which I was told today that apparently weapon DPS now is also being made into like an attack power weight. So tank attack power scaling actually sort of doesn't double dip, but it's a lot more powerful than we originally thought, at least from the damage side of things. So we'll have to see how the numbers all play out in the end. But Death Strike is now 25% of the previous 5 seconds of damage taken, which is up from the previous version, which was 20%, and reduced from a overpowered version, apparently, which was 30%. I guess that was too much. But live, it's 20, so it's 5% stronger from that. But they reduced the minimum amount to 7% of your max health, which is down from 10%. So your overall base heal is a little bit less powerful. But that also could be just number scaling as well, not necessarily a nerf or anything like that. But buff Death Strike, or sorry, they nerfed, they cut down Death Strike a little bit, but then buffed your mastery. So I don't know, they're just trying to put damage or numbers for healing in different places, I guess. And Bone Shield was also changed rather specifically here with all the armor stuff specifically. I can't say that word. So now, and this goes into your weapon enchants too, Bone Shield gives you 40% of your strength as armor. No longer does it give you a flat DR. So when this comes into play here, obviously this is a test character. I only have Rune of the Fallen Crusader on right now, but for your strength value, right, so we have the extra strength proc, so our armor is at 402. Obviously, when this falls off, it'll be on 350. The part about this that's weird is that on harder, maybe Mythic Plus style or Mythic Progression, you're going to see a lot more use out of Stoneskin Gargoyle. Stoneskin Gargoyle is 5% flat multiplicative armor, and then 5% all stats, which is basically just strength and stamina. This all feeds together. If you already have more base strength, you're going to have more armor, and then when you have stronger base armor, you're going to have more multiplied from Rune of the Stoneskin Gargoyle. The uptime on Fallen Crusader, though, I think was around 40% still, so that's still going to be really good. The heal is whatever. It's the 15% raw strength for 15 seconds, but if it's up roughly twice a minute-ish, then it's still going to be really good, but I was told on higher difficulty things, you might see a lot more usage of Stoneskin Gargoyle. Everything outside of like the Bleeding Edge, you can still run Fallen Crusader. Slightly more damage, of course, but a little bit less survivable on that front. Because a lot of times the heal is going to proc and not do anything anyway, so it's just the strength. So keep that in mind. On top of that, though, the ICD on Bone Shield is still 2 seconds before losing a stack. And then, of course, it's just armor, so it only is giving you physical damage reduction in that regard, too. On that same note, though, IBF was buffed across the board. So for IBF, for all 3 specs of Death Knight now, it's 30% DR up from 20, which makes sense because it's a freaking 3-minute cooldown with an 8-second duration. Yeah, you're immune to stun effects, but like 20% DR? What? So a little bit better in that regard. Heart Strike had its snare reduced. So your baseline snare, and this is just sort of like how mob movement works, I was told today by someone that I trust in this regard. Apparently the mob movement that they've noticed in BFA, and a lot of these 20 to 30% snares now, what that means is that mobs usually run faster than we do, normal movement speed-wise. 20 to 30% snare means that they run at the same speed of the character. So you actually can't really kite anything that's only snared by that little. You have to use a larger snare, of course, stun the target, and then make some distance, and then, of course, they'll run the same speed as you, so you'll be in tandem as you're kiting. And that's a totally different change for tanks, especially because you have to maybe kite a lot in different situations, mostly Miapow, right? But that will come into play in talents later on. And then you also can see this right here. You have Death's Advance baseline. You are not as slow as you previously thought you were. 45-second cooldown. It's a 30% movement speed increase. You cannot be slowed below normal movement speed during Death's Advance, and you're immune to forced movement effects and knockbacks during Death's Advance. And then passively, when you have Death's Advance, just when you have it all the time, you cannot be slowed below 70% movement speed. So any snares on you that are greater than 30% will not slow you past 70%, which is a pretty big deal. On the movement front, you can then also talent into Wraithwalk. Wraithwalk is a 70% channeled sprint, which of course you can have a stop cast macro to cancel it, or cancel aura in that sense. It's a 4-second sprint, but during this you cannot be slowed below 170% of movement speed. So you have both of these sprints now possible for the Blood Death Knight. Of course, all Death Knights can benefit from this. So depending on what you need for your mobility, then you have a little bit more, then you're not as slow. It's funny, they unnerfed Divine Steed for Prot Paladin and Red Paladin and Holy Paladin. It was a minute long. They put it back to 45 seconds recently, which is nice because it was really weird that you were suddenly not as slow as the other plate class, and they're just like, a little bit of Divine Steed, and they can take 2 charges of it, but still, it's a nice little bump in mobility for the Death Knights. So that's all the groundwork tuning under the hood here. Everything else, of course, you still have Crimson Scourge, still an RPPM chance on a Pale Horse, which is kind of just like, And then, of course, everything else is still remains the same. Death Grip is still a 15-second cooldown. For the Blood Decay, it's longer for the DPS specs. And the Death and Decay is a 15-second cooldown for you. It's longer for the DPS specs. So you still have Asphyxiate, AMS, DRW. DRW does not do anything like it did from the artifact now. So, and because it is only multiplying your damage by, it's like 30-ish. I looked at the math today, the backwards math on how much it duplicates your strikes. I held like 21, 22%. I don't know if that's less than what it does on live right now. So I don't know if they just totally nerfed the damage component of DRW and they want you to only use it for defensive purposes, but obviously it gives you more defensive and offensive. I don't know. Maybe we'll see. Because I know that on live, Blood Decays on the poll will DRW and yank aggro off of tanks like 3 or 4 seconds after they've already taunted and done all their opening combo. Because right now you have 2. So only having 1 now. I don't know why they just cut the damage multiplier down, but that's just a tuning thing. I'm not sure. But let us look at the biggest part, and what I really want to get to in this video is this, the talent panel. Because look at your talent panel on live. They're very different. What? This is the biggest overall change you are experiencing for the Blood Decay is your talent shakeup. And some of it, I think, and again, the namesake of this video, is really, really good. Mostly because you have themes in your talent combinations, where the ones above it, like you have like a Bone Shield talent in one row, and like a Runic Power one, and like a cooldown one in the same row. Like, what is this? Who did this? So talents that were removed were Spectral Deflection, Heart of Ice, Blood Tap, kind of, March of the Damned, Tremble Before Me, and Blood Mirror. I think the only one we're going to really worry about there that's a problem is the last 2. Tremble Before Me was really neat, and then Blood Mirror was abusable. So updated talents. Rapid Decomposition now is just the haste scaling on your Death and Decay and Blood Plague, which is weird because, again, this is a talent that gives you what you should have like everyone else does. Ossuary moves over here, reverted back to its live version. Previously, it removed the Death Strike cost reduction and just gave you more max runic power. Now it's the 10 plus runic power, so you can do the 4-8-12 build where you can actually do 3 Death Strikes in a row. And of course, when you have 5 or more Bone Shield charges, it reduces the cost of DS by 5 runic power, which is nice. So again, 40, 80, 120. Because by default, you have 115 runic power as Blood Decay. This gives you 125. So again, the 4-8-12, there is that. Anti-magic barrier. This was a weird one that was like a last stand kind of a deal, but now it's just a CDR off 15 seconds from your anti-magic shell and increases its duration and absorb amount by 30%. So now it is really just a buff version of anti-magic barrier, which is not to be scoffed at because the overall amount of magic resistance you can have, or magic DR you can have as a Blood Decay is ridiculous. It competes with Will and Acropolis here, and then Rune Tap. Rune Tap has also changed just slightly. It's now DR is 30% for 4 seconds instead of 40% for 3. So it lasts 1 second longer for 10% weaker. So a little bit more room to wiggle that in and not feel like you just, oh, I just barely missed that window. So that's there for you. But again, your options here in your DR tier. I mean, Ossuary, Foul Bulwark is 1% max health per Bone Shield charge. Again, Ossuary and Tombstone is unchanged, but now it's a Bone Shield tier. And this is going to be in a DR-oriented tier, right? This makes sense versus what the heck is above my head right there, right? I mean, Rapid Decomposition, this is a healing-oriented tier. Healing and damage, right? So Blood Plague and Death and Decay taking faster as both healing and damage and threat, right? Because Blood Plague heals you. And then D&D just does damage. Hemostasis, these are your... Let me read this real quick. This is your new talent. I want to go over these here. Legendary Shoulders, kind of, they're reworked in a way. So your Legendary Shoulders on live right now is that each use, I believe, let me read this. Each use of Blood Boil gives you 1 stack of this. Now, the new version of Hemostasis is that each enemy hit by Blood Boil gives you 8% damage and healing on your next Death Strike. So you can actually hit 5 targets right here, and there's 5 stacks. So it's a 40% stronger healing and damage Death Strike. Let me actually get some more runic power going on here. So that's going to be a bit of a rotational bit. And again, this is damage and healing. This is damage and healing as well. And then it competes with Consumption, which is almost the exact same version you have of this on live, your artifact ability. And so there's 100% of the damage it deals, you'll heal for it. So if I do a big sweep right here, right, so I get 4 hits of consumption, 4 heals from consumption based on the damage it deals. Still physical damage, so of course it will be reduced by armor. That'll happen there. And it does not apply the crazy vampiric aura leech. So people are always wondering about, well, our Blood Decay is still going to be like this amazing, unstoppable force in the Mythic Plus world. And maybe, sort of, but overall, a big thing of why you're in Mythic Plus is that your huge ability to self-heal. No tanks can do that anymore. And the consumption leech you give to your whole 5-man squad is just... it's 20% leech? What? So that being gone, there are still hooks here, and I'll show you a build that's really funny for keeping yourself alive. But they may not be as ridiculous for Mythic Plus. Tightening Grasp is still doing 30 seconds off Gorfine, so this competes with Wraith Walk and the new Grip of the Dead. This is a 90% snare during the duration of Death and Decay that decays at 10% every second. This is per D&D, so you can't kite things in and out of it. However, the actual snare amount that 90% is almost like a root. I'm gonna go over here and grab one of these angry... yeah, this guy right here. He'll do. That'll do, pig. So that's the initial snare. And again, you can't kite it back into it because the snare amount is based on the actual D&D. So, but again, that is a huge snare. Let me do that again. Whoop. So there is your kiting potential, at least in that regard. at least in that regard, Grip of the Dead has that utility, but that competes with Tightening Grasp, which is 30 seconds off your Gorfiends, and then, of course, Wraith Walk, which is your mobility. So, movement tool to move mobs, your movement, and then anti-movement. So, again, these tiers shape up like, well, these are choices based on my situation, which is the whole point of talents. Again, let me refer to you, what... So, other talents we have here. Those are all of your change talents, except for Red Thirst now, which is moved way down here next to Bone Storm and Purgatory. It's now 1 second off Vamp Blood per 10 runic power. And that's, of course, Purgatory still has the 3-second Absorb Health Shield where you have to heal that off or you die. 4-minute internal cooldown on Purgatory. And then Bone Storm. So you wanted to see a ridiculous amount of survivability you can still do on the Blood DK. Another one of your new talents over here is Voracious. Voracious is, as I put down here in my notes, it's basically the artifact trait Unending Thirst. But that only worked when you had a Blood Shield active, which was just a nightmare. I don't know how that even mathematically worked. Well, you're not tanking, I guess, sure. But now DS just gives you 15% leech for 6 seconds, period. That's it. Just one done. So this stacks with everything. All the damage you're doing is going to give you then... I mean, you're going to have this up almost all the time. You can just rotate a DS every 6 seconds or so. Pretty simple, easy to do. Just keep yourself 15% leech. And Bone Storm, the wording has been cleaned up, so it's 10 to 100 runic power when you actually cast the ability on a woman cooldown. So it lasts for up to 10 seconds. It heals you for 3% of your max health every time it deals damage. That is every time it deals damage. So it has nothing to do with every time it ticks or individual instances that... Oh, come on. The same thing happened to me today when I was streaming. I'm getting low health, and then I'll walk away from the target dummy. I'm out of melee range, and it still freaking kills me. Oh, that's fine. Dang it. I wanted to get really low health because I want to show what this combination does. Yeah, sure. Let me go over here. Just hit me. Just hit me in the face. This is a heroic dungeon boss right here. This 112 elite target dummy. It does not mess around. It doesn't mess around at all. One more. One more. Oh, you know the parry. Oh, okay. So, we're going to build some more runic power here. And we're going to put the leech up and then cast Bone Storm. Oh, wait, 7-second long Bone Storm, too. And I'm going to be full health. Yep. Didn't even recast the leech there. That was full health from, what was that, 7%, 9% to begin with there. That's not even including consumption, because you can then consumption with the leech, right? Because it doesn't cost anything. You just, like, do this, then do that. Sure, why not? Sure. So the leech won't happen. You'll see it over here. The Voracious applied to me, but I didn't have anything to heal, so you're not gonna see the leech heal. So, but you can do all that all at the same time. And of course, just doing damage with your Death Strike then will also heal you for the leech. And of course, this combines with the Hemostasis talent as well. That gives you stronger Death Strikes that heal you for more. So Voracious looks really strong. Maybe even too strong. I'm not entirely sure. You have to do follow-up Death Strikes, though, sometimes, because you get the Voracious applied to you, Death Strike will heal you, and then you get the Leech Shield with it as well. But maybe a little bit of a win, you know, a bit of a back and forth there on juggling this 6-second window. And that competes with Blood Worms, which are, you know, fine if they actually work. And then Mark of Blood now has a 6-second cooldown. Still costs 30 runic power. And it only heals you for 2% when you get auto-attacked, either yourself or you can put it on the target and you keep the extra healing going into your off-tank. That, of course, still works. But this is a healing tier. So you get to depend on what kind of healing you're going to need. Because Bloodworms are kind of splashy healing that'll help you recap from some magic damage, right? So will Anti-Magic Barrier. So will Tombstone. This is a 30% of your max HP shield every minute on top of Anti-Magic Barrier. Or even Will of the Necropolis window. You can go dip down if you can take a huge hit You can be in the Will of the Acropolis window, reducing all the damage you take by 35%. Pop a huge tombstone shield to make sure you're not going to get gibbed on the next auto attack or two. So there's differences here. You can only have 2 Mark of Bloods out before your first Mark of Blood's going to fall off, because 6, 12, 18, so 15 seconds between each dot. So you can have 3, but 2 at a time, especially what they're trying to put it at right now, because there's no cooldown for it on live, which is kind of weird. I mean, your only other new talent here is going to be the new Rune Strike, which I said Blood Tap is sort of gone. So Rune Strike now is a rune generator that deals damage, whereas Blood Tap is just like, hey, here's a rune with a 1-minute cooldown. When you spend runic power, it reduces the cooldown as well. So now you get to do physical damage with the Rune Strike. The cooldown is reduced by 1 second for every rune you spend. I was told this is roughly a 35 to 40 second cooldown per charge then, not a 1-minute cooldown. But it's on-demand runes. It's literally, it's on-demand runes, and it does some damage. So in that window then, if you're having Voracious up, you can use Rune Strike as a sort of a mini little extra Death Strike, because it deals a lot of damage. In comparison, like a Heart Strike, right? Heart Strike hits for meh. What's it hit for? Where's the Heart Strike at? We're looking at... Oh, every time I move talents, everything moves around my brain. So, yeah, 468 physical damage with this broken-ass thing, and then this is over 1,000. Of course, physical damage reduced by armor, right? Obviously. But there's a huge component there that could be really good. Yeah, consumption feels so weak on single target. I don't know how people are going to use it. Maybe it's pretty good on AoE, but I have no idea. Ouch. All right, get out of here. Too much damage. But that's your overall talent builds. So there's a whole lot more going on here that you can pick and choose together. Again, Hemostasis and Voracious look really good together as well. Again, I think Will of the Acropolis is going to be super big for sort of not gaming, but if you get hit by a huge attack that brings you right below that point, there's a big chance you're going to be living after this kicks in. It's basically just a passive shield wall. You time a Tombstone window in there. Tombstone feels good as well for on-demand runic power, because it gives you 30 runic power if you actually eat all 5 bone shield charges, so you can almost back-to-back Death Strike in a row again. But this, again, you have to compete with Ossuary and Foul Bulwark. Depends on what you need to do. But overall, there's a lot more thematic feel in these talents. We got some people testing and looking at the talent combinations that they can do too. But yeah, this looks a lot better. I don't know if there's a hierarchy here, but let me know in the comments down below what you think of the overarching talent combinations you can do with the Blood DK. On top of that, Warmode. And before I go into Warmode, GCD stuff. So Death Grip has I forgot about this. Death Grip has a 0.5 second cooldown. So you actually have to not be on the GCD to Death Grip stuff now, which is kind of annoying for a tank. Gore Fiends is on a 1.5, because it's a major utility thing. Then Dancing Rune Weapon and Tombstone are on the GCD. So casting your Dancing Rune Weapon now puts you on a global, which just, okay, I guess. It makes the animation play out, I suppose. And there's no synergy with Dancing Rune Weapon and Rune Strike. It doesn't do anything when you Rune Strike, which is kind of weird. You don't get any extra runes and you don't get any extra damage. I don't think it's not working properly yet. So we'll see if that gets fixed in a recent build. There's still like a half a page-ish of notes that I had for the Blood DK for the things that aren't working, which is unfortunate. Yeah, and now Warmode then. Not that. This. So we have all 3 of these auras selected. So what Warmode is it unlocks the ability to take any of your PvP talents that are in this new tree and use them in the open world. You get 10% more XP for killing mobs and doing quests. So you get additional rewards at end game for doing world quests, and you get additional honor for killing enemies of the opposite faction. You only toggle war mode in the capital city of Orgrimmar or Stormwind, and then you're sharded to war mode until you go back to your major city and then turn it back off. So you could be fighting in PvP all the time or not. If you go on a 10+ kill streak, you get to become an assassin for your faction, and you get 15% more damage and healing dealt until you die. You pick one of your medallion talents, which can be interchanged whenever you can change talents wherever you want to, and of course, and then you can take any talent combination for open world questing, or of course for PvP islands, or for arenas, dungeons, arenas, battlegrounds, not dungeons. They don't work in PvE. So we took all 3 auras. So decomposing aura, which is the 3% max health every 2 seconds to enemies within 10 yards of you, up to 5 stacks of this. And then it lasts for 6 seconds even after they get out of your decomposing aura. We took Heartstop Aura, which increases or decreases the cooldown recovery rate of all abilities by 20% for all enemies within 8 yards. So that adds more cooldown to other people's cooldowns, enemy cooldowns. And then Necrotic Aura is all enemies within 12 yards of you will take 8% increased magic damage. Then, of course, all of your shadow damage would be increased. And then all of your, you know, if you're debuffing people around you, all your mages and your warlocks and stuff will do more damage to those targets as well. So I don't know how these kind of scaling multipliers are going to work against PvE mobs, because chunking world mobs for 3% of their max health every 2 seconds would be a little bit ridiculous, especially when they have huge health pools like rare elites and whatnot. So this would be weird how they scale. But obviously for open world PvP, take whatever you'd like. Or for solo questing, Last Dance gives you 50% off your cooldown for DRW for the DPS standpoint of things. You can take Strangulate, so you can have Strangulate and you already have Asphyxiate, right? So you have a 5-second stun. You can grab Strangulate to get your 5-second silence. You can have Unholy Command to have 2 charges of Death Grip for those damn mages that keep blinking away from you. And then you can, of course, Strangulate them and then Asphyxiate them, whatever you want to do, you know, right? So they can't run away. All the tanks I've looked at so far for the PvP war mode stuff like that have a lot of potential super annoying CC builds. Brewmaster and Vengeance Demon Hunter are really egregious of this. Blood Decay is a little bit less so, but there are some 8 hooks you can put on here for. So go check out Wowhead or WowDB for the talent calculators. Make your own build, put that together, see what you think for war mode. But the triple aura is pretty neat. But that's Blood Decay. The biggest part of this whole video, the whole wrap-up, is these talent combinations, right? Like these potential builds you can put together that really work well together, like Voracious and Hemostasis. I'm interested to see how that works out. Also worry if it's going to be the #1 go-to or if Tombstone gets some play. The new Rune Tap versus Anti-Magic Barrier versus Will in the Acropolis. There's a lot of power here in the theme of each tier now. Versus, again, what... But thank you very much for listening. If you enjoyed the video, of course, maybe toss it a subscribe here on the YouTube channel or go check out my socials down below in the video description box. Of course, you can go follow me on Twitter. I post whenever new videos go up. I post whenever I'm going live on Twitch, streaming stuff like that. When the live shows come back up soon, we have some MDI stuff going on in July. And then, of course, live shows coming back up once BFA gets rolling. So go follow me on Twitter if you'd like, or any of my other social media in the video description box down below with the VOD. And, of course, my schedule and the archive for all the testing I have done. Thank you all very much for listening to the rambles here for the Blood Decay. So Frost and Unholy are up next, and I will see you all in the next BFA Beta Second Pass video.